Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Now at the last of the last show, I showed you these instruments, and they were the penny whistles. Sometimes I call them Irish flutes because a lot of people play Irish music on them. And you can get them in Ireland, but they're also made in England. A lot of these little flutes like this are made in England. And I told you that they were cylindrical because they don't come to a point. They just go straight down as a single shot. And this is what many of them are. Different sizes, different colors, no tone hole in the back. All of the tone holes are in the front, and they usually are a little different size of tone hole to accommodate the different size of your fingers. There, now you can see it if I tip it back. If I tip it back, you can see that those holes are not exactly the same size. They're similar. I mean, there's not a great variation, but there is a little bit of difference. If I can hold it straight here, you can see that about the 1, 2, 3rd, the 4th finger down is the fourth hole down is a very small opening for your finger, as opposed to some of the larger ones. So I'm going to hold it back so you can see the reflection, so you can see that more clearly. If I get it right. Okay. Well, anyway, this is what they're like. Now, I do want to show you the other kinds of penny whistles. These are the sweet tone. They're called the sweet tone. And they do come to a point. I have a red one. I have a green one. They play just like a penny whistle, but they come to a point. These are the conical instruments because they come to a point. They're not straight up and down. And they do have the Fipple mouthpiece, or like a Fipple mouthpiece. And I'm going to see if I can have you, if I tip it back, the reflection, so you can see the size of the tone holes in the front. The mouthpiece is plastic. The rest of it is metal, except this metal is colored. One green, one red. They were made in England, and they play beautifully. I do a lot of music. I have done a lot of music with these, and they're fascinating. I went to an orchestra rehearsal. I was playing the flute, and I was playing various instruments, but a flute player came up to me and said, "Pat, you really ought to try the penny whistles." She said, they're a lot of fun to play. They're not hard to play at all. And so I went ahead and went to a music store, and I bought 1 or 2 penny whistles, and she was right. It was just natural. They just play. You put them in your mouth and they play. So I always used to tell the pastor, there's nothing to it. When you play a woodwind, you just put it in your mouth and it plays. He says, yeah, for you it does. But it's a beautiful, beautiful kind of instrument that you can put in your mouth, and you don't have to worry about pads, rods, screws, a cork. I mean, you just don't have to worry about that. They're just plain and simple, and I know a lot of Indian tribes play instruments like this. They are simple in their design, but you can play a lot of really magnificent music with it. So these are the conical ones, and I have another one here that I want to show you. This happens to be a Shaw's, and it's conical, and you see it comes to a point. And let's see, it's reflective. Anything that's silver is reflected. Notice 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4th tone hole down is a very small one. To accommodate your fingers, the size is different, and also the size of the last one is a little bit smaller. And that's the way many of these are. Now, occasionally they're all the same size, just because it's easier to make it, I think. But the ones that are more expensive try to accommodate the size of your fingers. Even the tone hole in the back does that. This also does not have a tone hole in the back, but this is in the key of E. Very unusual to find something in the key of E, but this is what this is. It's a Shaw's E. Now, I did show you, well, I haven't shown you these, the straight melody flutes. I've shown you, I showed you some others similar to it on the last segment, but they come in different colors. They have a Fipple mouthpiece. There's no tone hole in the back for these, and the finger holes are pretty much the same size. A little bit of difference maybe, but not much. And they play fairly well. They do have a place for you to put your thumb right here. It's not a tone hole, it's just to rest your thumb, and a little indentation in the back, and they do that for your right thumb. So you do have a rest place for both of your thumbs, which will be in the back of the instrument, and the tone holes are slightly raised, not much. I'm not even sure you can catch this on television, but they're slightly raised, so it makes it easier for students to be able to find out where their fingers actually go. And they also come in these beautiful colors. This one here is raised a little bit more. You know, it's interesting that this one here does not have a brand name on it. Some of them do and some of them don't. This is a Pearl Piper. This one here is a Pearl Piper. This plays quite well. I've actually done solos on this, and I paid less than $2 for it. And I know that somebody complained, you play cheap instruments. I'll play anything that plays. And what I like to do is to get the smaller instruments and the simpler instruments for people to see, because one thing, they are playable. And you don't have to be a tremendous musician to be able to get good sound out of them, and you can play simple songs with them. With the recorders, you can play very complex sounds. The recorder is not a toy. The recorder is a regular instrument, and I do classical music on it. But these are the little straight melody flutes. I call them little melody flutes. They're nice to look at, they come in beautiful colors, and they do play. Not as well as some of the recorders do, but they do play. Now, let's see, I talked about the recorders. Here's one of my smaller ones. It's not a sopranino. This is a little tiny one, and it plays very well. It's in pitch with itself. But see how little it is. The smaller it is, the closer your fingers are together. It has a little tone hole in the back. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a little tone hole in the back. The labium is in front. You have a regular Fipple mouthpiece. You even have a little block that you can see, but it may not show up. A lot of the blocks are the same color as the rest of the mouthpiece, so it's hard to see it. But it's there. You can feel it with your fingers. If you were sitting here, you know, you'd be able to feel it with your fingers. And small tone holes, close together because the size of the instrument is so little. B, A, G, F, E, D, C. And this one was maybe less than a couple of dollars. This one came from Wendy's. I bought this at Wendy's. When I saw it, I said, this is one I gotta have, and there it is. So, and it plays. I mean, it really does. I'm amazed at how well it plays considering the size of it. Now, I do want to show you, the sasutos. I use sasutos a lot. When I was playing in an orchestra, I used the sasutos a lot. They can play a lot of music. They're like the penny whistle. They can play 2 octaves easily. You can play complicated music. The Fipple mouthpiece is small, but it is a Fipple mouthpiece. They are a little tunable. The labium is right here. They come in different sizes, but mine are all black. I think it's the only color that they come in. There's no tone hole in the back. They play a lot of music, and they play it well, and they're in pitch with each other, tone holes. So this is a sasuto. It would be like a penny whistle. It's made out of metal or plastic, and it would be like a penny whistle, but it's made by a different company, and the tone is rich. It has a nice tone. I just brought one of those with me. Now, you have the song flute. This is a little song flute, and it plays well. It doesn't play more than 1 octave, but it plays well. And they use it in schools, so you can see how the fingers are raised, the tone holes are arranged. And there's a little tone hole in the back. So you put your thumb, left thumb on that tone hole. You can't get the notes without it. And you put your fingers right here. And your low C is right here. B-A-G-F-E-D-C. And it plays well. It's got a larger labium close to the top of the instrument. It's shaped so that it does not have a bell. It comes to a point, but it does play well. Now, I do have a story, and I don't know how much I should say here, but this one was a rescue from one of my nieces and nephews when we were out driving. I was with my brother and his wife and 2 or 3 of their kids, and all of a sudden somebody picked this up and says, "Hi, Auntie Pat, you can have this one. We don't want it anymore. Anyway, it doesn't play." And they flipped it over to the back seat where I was, and I grabbed it, and it wouldn't play. It really wouldn't play. I took it home. I bathed it with alcohol, not on the inside, but on the outside, and I blew in it gently. And I did it every so often, and wouldn't you know, all of a sudden it started to make a little squeak and a little squeal, and I knew at that point it could repair. So I kept it up, kept it in a nice warm environment, blew a little more air and a little more air. Pretty soon I get a squawky little note, and then 2 squawky little notes. And as I played it more and more, it got stronger and stronger to the point where it plays very normally, plays in pitch, has a nice little tone to it, and I brought it to an orchestra rehearsal and I played it, and everybody was really fascinated with it. I've done sermons with it because it's an example of the healing process and what the healing process can be like, because basically that's what I did with it, and it plays fine. It's just like nothing ever happened to it. But I tell you that if you really want an instrument to last and play well, don't leave it in a car. Don't leave it in any environment where the temperature gets too hot or gets too cold. In an attic, that's a horrible place for an instrument. It'll even sometimes crack it, you know. Even metal can crack under those situations. And I do have a metal trombone that did crack. I don't know where, somebody gave it to me as a gift, but it hadn't been well taken care of. It plays very well. A little tender, loving care, and they can play very well. So this is the song flute. They use them a lot in schools, as I said before. This is the tonette. It has a little bell. Anytime an instrument flares out toward the end of the instrument, that's called a bell. It does have a tone hole in the back. It's a different shape than the song flute is, has a little fipple mouthpiece, has a labium, and it has a tone hole. It's the same thing. B-A-G-F-E-D-C. You can already see the similarities. It's a straight line kind of fingering pattern. And the tone holes are about the same size. And it can be pulled apart. I won't do it now, but it can be pulled apart for cleaning. It doesn't have quite the tone that the song flute has. The song flute's a little bit better in tone, but you can learn a lot. Here you have some raising of the finger holes. So that's another of the melody flutes. What do I want to show you next? Well, the flutophone. I like the flutophones. They have a good tone. They come in white with red trim, or they come in black with white trim. They have a tone hole in the back. You can see that clearly, can't you? And they have a little thumb rest for your right hand. You would need to keep that covered or you wouldn't get the notes. The tone holes in the front, B-A-G-F-E-D-C. Just like the flutes, just like the piccolos, just like the saxophones, just like a lot of the woodwind instruments, very similar fingering patterns. It only gets for 8 notes, maybe sometimes a 9th note, but it has good quality tone, and they use them a lot in schools, and I'm glad that they use them. They're kind of a step up from the tonette, but they are interesting instruments, and they do play well. And it's a good way to teach children how do you take care of an instrument. They require care. A Fipple mouthpiece, labium in the front right here, and a very nice instrument. I've done a lot of solo work on that. Now, I'm going to show you something I brought in. This is different. I've had it here before. This is an Israeli flute. Now, it is different. Shepherds use them. Sometimes I wonder how. They're not easy to play at all. But what you do is you put these two little things, they're carved out, and you put them in. Now, for me to keep them there, you see, they're on strings so you don't lose them because they're constantly falling out. But what you need to do is you need to put them in water. If you have a bamboo instrument, it'll absorb water, and you put these in, and I know they're not going to stay because I'm going to be moving the instrument around a little, but you can play both sides at the same time. And it comes with two bodies with the tone holes, and you can actually play both sides. You would have the left hand on the left side, the right hand on the right side. You would blow into these once I would get them in so that they would stay, and if I had water, I could do that. And you blow in the top of them, and you play them. Now, that's an unusual instrument, one of those instruments where it's rare. We don't see these very often, but this came from Israel, and it's ones that shepherds use. It actually is a bamboo instrument. I have several bamboo instruments. So that kind of shows you what we have. The thing I want to show you is the fingering patterns of the instrument. Now, this is my Gemeintat piccolo, and it has all kinds of rods, side keys, and it's important for you to remember that you can play anything with this. The octave mechanism is in the back. You play it like this. It has that raised area around the hole, around the mouthpiece, so therefore that's not a fife. It's a regular instrument, and there is a cap on it. There's a reason for this cap. You can't have the air going in both directions. If you blow into something, you've got to direct the air so that it only goes in one direction. So this would be the hand position of this instrument. And it's like the flute. B-A-G-F-E-D, and that little C, if it were there. It's not because the instrument is too tiny to hold on to it. But it is a very interesting woodwind instrument. Now, what I want to do, I hope I haven't left anything out here that I should be showing you. I want to show you some charts of the fingering patterns of the instruments, even those that are woodwinds, but they're not considered to be flutes, like saxophones and so forth. So I brought in some charts to show you. All right, here's the flute. I have several of them. They're beautiful instruments. They're one of my main instruments. And if we can see Rick will get it up for me when we can see the chart. I want to show you the fingering pattern, which is going to be the same, of course, as the flutes are. But let me just go over that with you so you can see what they are. There we go. If I wanted to, this would be the B, and this would, you skip this one here, and the A, the G, and F, E, D, and C. It's the same pattern as the woodwinds, and here's the octave mechanism in the back. You have a lot of side keys here. There's this little one right here. That's where you play your G sharp. Trust me, that's where you play your G sharp. And you get the sharps of the C and so forth right there. Middle C is as far as it goes. But it can play 3 octaves, and I'll be showing you that in the in a minute. So that's the flute, which plays like a piccolo. Now I want to show you the saxophone because even though it's not a melody flute, it is a woodwind. You do blow in and you have the vibrating reed. This would be the neck piece right here. This is going to be the octave mechanism. You just see a little bit. It's a really wonderful drawing. And let me flip over because I have one marked out here in terms of where the fingerings are. or at least I think I do. Let me take off this because I have them, let's see, right here. Just trying to get the right, okay, this is what I'm looking for right here. This would be your B, and this would be your A, and you would be your G. You skip all of these. These keys are playing, but they're not. You're not actually fingering them. You wouldn't be able to reach your fingers that far. And this would be the F, E, D, and C. Now, in this case, you can also get a B flat out of it, so it goes a little lower than middle C. But you can see the pattern: B, A, G, F, E, D, C, right here. And the little white areas would be either ivory or plastic little areas where you actually put your fingers. It's usually not the same color. It's usually a different material than what the rest of the instrument are. These are side keys right here. There's a group of side keys over there. And as a result of those side keys, you can get sharps and flats. Your octave mechanism doesn't show, but it's back here. And this here is a high F. So if I play a saxophone, it is one of my main instruments, if I use one of these side keys, one of these keys up here opens up because there's a system of rods. It doesn't come out very clearly, but there's a system of rods. So you can press on a key down here and it opens up a key up there. That's why these instruments are so complicated. Saxophones are quite complicated. Clarinets are quite complicated. Even the flute is. But it's the same fingering pattern. B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Now, if I were to play the C, then I would play this finger alone. And then if I want to play a B, I lift this finger up and just play that. And then go down A, G, F, E, D, C. Now let me show you the recorder. It's exactly the same thing. Here's your C, okay? And if I want to play the B, I lift this finger up and put this one down, just like I do on the saxophone, then add A, G, F, E, D, C. That C major scale is exactly the same fingering as it is on a saxophone. And when you get to the other and in fact, I've drawn it out here, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. I wanted to show you one more. The folded bass, I have one, and it's the same thing. B, A, and you press that key, that's going to give you the G, even though the key is down here. You couldn't stretch your finger down there, but you could B, A, G by doing that lever, then play this, F, E, D, and then C. So all of the fingering patterns are very much the same for all of the woodwind instruments, the same for almost anything. You can pick up any instrument, and it's the same thing. B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Now, there is a little difference here and there for some of the instruments, which I don't have time to go into, but for the most part, they are the same. The flutophone, I can play a C major scale on the flutophone, the same as I can on the flute, the same as I can on the piccolo, the same as I can on the recorder, the same thing that I can on any of the bass recorders. It works. It absolutely works. And on the saxophone as well. So I'm going to close it here. We're about out of time, and I just wanted to give you this as an overview of what the melody flutes actually are. And I brought most of them in, because I have a lot more I couldn't bring in, but this gives you a sampling of them. And I'll bring them in different ones from time to time. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.